A new study says elite colleges favor rich kids over admission from middle-class applicants. The group Opportunity Insight says prestigious colleges such as Stanford and Duke tend to accept children of the top 1% of U.S. income earners. That's more than twice the rate of students from any other income group who had actually similar test results. Now, families in the top 1% of income earners typically make more than $600,000 each year. Joining us for more on this is Adam Feldman, live from Los Angeles. He's a political scientist and the founder and creator of Empirical SCOTUS, a statistical blog focused on studying the U.S. Supreme Court. And I guess that's where we begin, looking at the highest court in the land, the recent decision that they had on kind of leveling the playing field. It was level. What does this study tell you? Does it come as a surprise? Because when I hear the richest kids get in, I kind of figured, yeah, they do.
Yeah, this isn't a huge shock. This really plays out from the decision the Supreme Court made, because when you diminish diversity as a factor that represents how a person becomes admitted to a college, you know, we have to think about who's left. And who's left right now are the individuals who the universities really want to be representative of the universities. And these tend to be people from rich families who have been successful in business and who will look like the next set of leaders. So the schools use proxies to understand who they should admit. And one of those proxies is wealth.
Yeah. Now, what motivates the admissions office to choose the more wealthy kids over the rest of those who have similar SAT scores or ACT scores? One thing that does come to mind is the fact that colleges are feeling a financial pinch right now. And if you're going to have people with pretty deep pockets who can donate to the university, those are obviously going to be the more wealthy individuals.
Sure. So a lot of admissions committees say that they don't take need for financial aid, let's say, into account when they decide on who they're going to admit to schools. But ultimately, if they're looking holistically at the applicant, then they're looking at what the applicant represents as well. And they want somebody who is going to make the school look good, who's going to bring in money down the road, and who looks like the typical individual who's going to be successful. And the way that they see this is generally through eyes of people who have been successful in business, and that represent the characters and individuals that they want the school to look like.
I feel I've been lucky the last 30-some years working in an international environment, and I love the diversity. What do you think people run the risk of really missing out if they just continue to reach out and kind of cater to wealthy families?
Right. I mean, since the early 2000s, when affirmative action was held to be constitutionally protected in colleges, diversity was a factor that was important because it brought individuals together with different life experiences. And it's hard to understand where a person comes from if you don't actually have them as part of your community. So we're missing out on other people's experiences, and ultimately in a global environment, diversity is important. Diversity is key because you're going to be dealing with different people. And so that's a huge loss right now, potentially, for colleges that are no longer using a affirmative action program now that the Supreme Court has held it to be unconstitutional.
Yeah, it's really arguably a big step back if you listen to a lot of people. Now, on a similar note, we know that some lawmakers are trying to legally ban what are called legacy admissions. Now, what's that about? Obviously, these are people whose parents, relatives graduated from a Stanford, from a Duke, from one of the Ivy League schools, and they have always had the inside track on this. What kind of problem is this, and do you think it's actually going to be addressed?
So there are two issues here. One is that when you look at legacies, this is generally a white audience who is a legacy admission. When you just look at who these universities have accepted historically, they tend to be white applicants. And so without affirmative action adding to the diversity pool, if legacy admissions are given a leg up, then the schools are going to be are going to be less diverse even than they would be if you hadn't had legacy admissions as a component. So it's going to make the student body much more homogeneous,
Right.
it also tends to favor these families who the schools want to be representative of the school. So these are people who have been successful in the past, that look the way the universities want them to look like, and that are going to put then future students into these positions that will also hold power. So it's really giving power to the elite already.
Yeah, and I would really argue that a lot of students who are on the threshold that don't get in, these are the kind of students that could really make a difference if they went to a top school. So what does this say about the makeup of the workforce? Does this answer why minorities, people of color, tend not to have more managerial or executive positions in traditional American companies from all sectors?
So sure, when you look at the reasons why affirmative action was held to be constitutional in the Grutter case in 2003 that set this standard, one of the main reasons was because it would lead to a more diverse workforce, and that individuals from racial and ethnic minorities would then go back to their communities as well as to the larger society, and would create it would create more capable individuals across society. So this is just going to lead it to be a much more homogeneous population that's coming out of these schools and that are going to go into the big jobs, because as we've seen, it is these top schools that are really filling in individuals in the top 1% of jobs and executive positions.
It has been an interesting time in the United States. Adam Feldman, thank you so much for your insight. We certainly appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me.